Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavors of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your technical questions answered, and contribute to the community forum. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our construction, tech, or weekly Global Passive House Showcase webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, back in Auckland, New Zealand.
Yes, you're back home. I'm home too. This is Zach Semke. I'm in Seattle, Washington. It was fun to see you in Chicago.
Back in warm weather. I stepped off the plane and was suddenly very conscious of not being in the fall anymore, and back being in a. It seemed to have warmed up just in the week that I was away, and it was definitely into spring here and humid.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Chicago was quite nice. It was fall weather, but it was quite sunny and warm for the project tours we were on Saturday, which was great. And yeah, Seattle is really cold and blustery and windy, and we're about to get hit by an atmospheric river. So we've got flood watches happening for the next couple of days. We're going to get drenched.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it beats the wildfire smoke. That's all I'm going to say.
We are back. We're just a week or less than a week at the time recording. By the time this comes out, it'll be a week since the Fierce conference in Chicago. I felt like a very naive New Zealander / Australian traveling to the big city, wandering around with big eyes. I have to admit, as part of my naivety, just no comprehension of the significance of architecture in Chicago.
It's an amazing city for that. It's
such an amazing city.
Yeah.
I was a couple of miles away from the venue of the where I was staying was away from the venue of the conference, and I think I took a different route every single day.
Yeah,
and it was just incredible, the buildings. Just a great city to walk around.
It is. I was learning about the Monadnock building, which is where we filmed that special episode of the Passive House Accelerator live on Wednesday night. So that's where the offices of Farr Associates and of Fias are, and it's kind of a crazy looking building, and it actually it was like the last big, really huge high rise made of brick, and so and masonry. So it's like before the steel skyscraper stuff really took off. And so it's this really architecturally significant building. And that's the reason I guess it has at the bottom, the exterior walls are 14 feet thick. That's why it kind of flares 14. Out. 14 feet thick.
Wow.
Yeah. And the walls can get skinnier and skinnier as you go higher, because they're not bearing as much weight. So yeah, it's just like, it's a city that's full of these really interesting moments in architectural history, and it's all about these crazy tall buildings, and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and so many that you wouldn't know about. I did the boat tour on one day, but then I did a second walking tour, and so many buildings that I had been walking past each day with barely giving them a second glance, and you learn about the history of them, and they just become something else entirely. You mentioned that one, the masonry. There was one building there that was cast iron. It was made of cast iron. Was the main structural element, and that was in response to. It was a fairly early on in the rebuild of the city, and that was in because they were not wanting to rebuild out of timber, because basically the
Yeah.
history of Chicago is that the whole thing was decimated by a massive fire. So all of the rebuild was done in non-inflammatory materials, and this particular one was done in cast iron, which would, I mean, thermal bridge. It's a terrible thermal envelope, but and a very interesting piece of history. And another one that I noticed. I mean, there's too many to go through here, but the original headquarters of the Chicago Motor Club, which noticeably now has a LEED certification. It was renovated, so in 2016 became LEED certified. But they have a beautifully, I guess, reconditioned Model T in their foyer.
Oh wow!
Because it's the motor club. And of course, and I really do. I mean, one of the standouts now of the Chicago skyline is, I can't remember the name of the tower, the curvy one.
Aqua Tower. The Aqua Tower.
Yeah, which is the triple tower, which is one of two, which has some really strong women as the leaders of those projects, and the head architects of the firm, I learnt, was she's very hesitant to be claimed as the architect solely responsible for that building. She likes it to be referred as the tallest building in the world that is designed by a company that's led by a woman. Which is quite a nice way of.
You said it's triple tower? Is that what you said?
Well, it's got three main sections to it, and then
I wonder if it's not the Aqua Tower, and maybe it's a different building. Anyway, mislead people.
Yeah. Anyway, just so many stunning buildings,
and
of course a great conference. Awesome to be amongst some amazing people and to get to meet people in real life. We had the whole Passive House Accelerator crew there, but also some of our sponsors, but also and just so many of the Passive House community in one place, more than 500 in fact, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was. It was such a blast. We got to do MC of the Design Awards ceremony for the FIAS Design Awards, which was super fun. And of course, the after party was a total blast too. So it was all sorts of great stuff. So, and we're gonna have a bunch of podcast interviews rolling out in beginning very, very soon. So both Matthew and you and Mary were super busy throughout the 2 core days of the core conference, interviewing a lot of people. So can't wait to hear those.
Yeah, good times.
Yep.
Well, speaking of sponsors, it was great to meet many of them and chat again. I think we also recorded a few videos showing some of what they had to offer at the expo. But of course, many of them are supporters of this show. So we'll give them a bit of a shout out.
Yes. So thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Bax Ingui Architects, Galavel, Minutair All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification Units, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stillcorp, and Zola Windows. Thanks also to our champion sponsors, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, Proseco, and Source 2050. And a big shout out to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority.
Thank you very much. All right. Tell us about who we've got on the podcast this week.
Yeah, we're excited to have Mariana Pickering, the co-founder of EMU Passive. And, Mariana has been a leading educator in the passive house space for years now. And EMU has both, as you'll hear in the interview, has both an educational arm as well as a passive house services arm. They've educated over 600 tradespeople in passive house training, and so we talk about that. And we also you mentioned the rebuilding effort in Chicago after the fire. We also talk about the rebuilding effort that's going on after the Marshall Fire outside of Denver, and the role of the Passive House community there in ensuring that they build forward in that process. So please enjoy. So I have Mariana Pickering, co-founder of Emu Passive, with me today. Mariana, thank you so much for joining me for this chat.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So we were just talking about the fact that I had been looking back into our previous episodes, assuming that I could go look at the first interview that we've done with you on the podcast. And then I realized, wait, we haven't done an interview with you yet, which is surprising. You and Enrico were on Passive House Accelerator's live program back, I think,
we did
a year and a half ago.
Tech.
Yeah, right. Construction tech, where you were sharing some mock-ups and stuff and installation, and talking about your practice there at Emu Passive and what you guys all do. So for folks who did not see that, though, can we start with a quick intro into Emu Passive, what you're doing, what problem you're working to solve, et cetera?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
So our mission as a company is that we want to help close the gap between kind of what's happening at mainstream construction level and what we know is available in advanced building science research in the world. And that research for us takes the form of the benchmark, the International Passive House Standard. So we are experts in that standard. We use it even when we're, working on projects that don't go for full Passive House certification. We use that as our measuring stick to help get to net zero goals or LEED goals or FIAS or any other kind of standard that's dealing with actual numbers. We always kind of say that you can't reach a goal that you can't define.
Right.
And so we want to help mainstream construction start to kind of define those goals a little bit better. And that's how you reach them.
Right. So, and what are the means by which you work to reach those goals? I mean, who are you working with?
We are part training and part, consulting, although our consulting is really kind of education-based consulting as well. So we are an accredited education provider with the Passive House Institute and offer the training for builders or tradespeople in the United States. We also wrote the curriculum for the Australian Passive House Association and work with them to get that out down there. But we really focus on the builder training for a specific reason. I kind of joke that I'm a recovering architect, and in my former life, we were an architecture studio in Italy, and found that you can design something a million times in whatever way you want, but if it's not built that way, then the performance just isn't there. And so we really got into training builders almost out of necessity. And then it became a real need, especially here in the US. There was a big need for it about 5-6 years ago when we started here. And then on the other side of things, so I manage most of our training program, and Enrico manages our services team. And on the consulting side of things, again, going back to our mission as a company, we want to standardize as much as possible and simplify some of this advanced building science so that it's more accessible. So we actually don't really do kind of traditional consulting contracts anymore. We really focus on streamlining early stage concept phase feasibility studies to kind of make some high impact decisions early in the project, because that can have huge impacts both on budget and on the scope of a so-called consultant later. And then the other thing that we have is our pilot program for residential construction in North America, where we basically license out a set of construction details to various builders. We've got maybe 20 or 30 projects going on right now in different climate zones. And we kind of act as almost like a personal trainer. Like we check in at milestones, make sure they're on track, that kind of a thing. Yeah,
I wasn't aware of that. That's cool. I think that your educational programs are very visible to, somebody like me who's, seeing what's going on in the community, kind of like that's that I think probably because you're out there marketing to get students, but I was less aware of the kind of volume of the consulting work, and of course this licensing of details, which is a really interesting model. I'm not sure I've heard that model before. It's
well,
cool.
and honestly, most of the builders in that program are former students. We find that the training first approach is always best. We're all speaking the same language at that point. We've all been through the same journey. It helps us kind of make sure, that the fit is good and that it's going to be a productive team. So much, as you know, comes down to just communication and organization of teams. And so that kind of helps us, through the application process to decide who we want to work with on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. You have a community that you're building over time with these. And give just for a sense of scale, how many students have you worked with? Roughly.
I should have run numbers before.
No.
I want to say we probably have over 600 alumni now.
Wow.
Maybe a little bit more. We have the online format too. So when the pandemic hit, we put everything online, and that was an amazing thing to see because, it's an industry where I'm not an online learner. And then the pandemic comes and, it all gets relative real quick. And so it was really interesting to see how that actually opened up access even more to people that wouldn't have necessarily been able to get this kind of training, prior to us starting it in Colorado 6 years ago. You had to fly to New York, or sometimes Pacific Northwest, there was something, or you went to Europe, and builders aren't going to do that. And so that's the entire middle America that was just left hanging. And then when we went online, it was amazing to see. I mean, if you look at our map of alumni, it's amazing to see how spread out the interest really is. It's not like it's just in, blue states or something. It's not at all like that. It's all over the place.
That's encouraging to hear. So what is the programming that you're most focused on now that we've sort of, hopefully emerged or emerging or whatever we are now in our relationship with COVID? What are you up to in terms of on the educational side? I mean, clearly you have three prongs of the business. So, but on the education side, what's the focus?
So this year has been intense. At the beginning of the year, we started taking our wild emu trailer, sometimes called the potty wagon, on the road. So we have part of our educational or part of our training for the builders developed into hands-on workshops early on. And obviously with the pandemic, when we went online, we had to abandon that for a little bit, but it gave us an opportunity to kind of reset and look at how we wanted to offer that. And because really, ultimately, builders need that hands-on application of the coursework to kind of sear it into your brain. Everybody does. That's how you learn. You learn by getting all of these different formats. And so we have a passive pod that we've designed, and it's not kind of your typical construction wall mock-up. If you go watch that Passive House Accelerator Construction Tech Tuesdays thing that we did, we show what that looks like. But it's basically a textbook on wheels. It's kind of our extension of the coursework. We have some very abstracted kind of lessons to learn in each of those panels that you put up. And then we do job role simulation as well, because like I said, so much of it's like just communication on site, making sure the site supervisor is ready to go, all the subs are ready to go. And so this pod is a traveling pod workshop now. And at the beginning of the year, we started going around and doing these boot camps all over the US. So this year we've been to Texas. We've been to California twice now. I just got back from Central California. We went up to Maine. We of course do them here in Colorado every quarter. And then we are about to head out to upstate New York in November.
Wow. It's emu on tour.
It is. It's fun. It's like a 5-day intensive, brain juice exercise. It's like 2 days of classwork, 2 days of hands-on workshop, and then they take the accreditation exam on the Friday, and then we kind of have a celebration on the Friday afternoon. And it almost feels like summer camp, everybody kind of bonds throughout the week. And,
it seems like there'd be some great relationships kind of forged during those times.
One thing to shout out real quick to the Santa Barbara one that we just did. And I think, this is kind of the direction that I hope this kind of training is going. But we were actually completely funded by the local regional energy network there, Tri-County Regional Energy Network.
Yeah.
And they covered this, they scholarshiped an entire class of builders, of local builders. And they're now going to have, this pioneering group of builders forever there in their community. And that was such a great way to really kind of prove that, it's already a big time investment for these builders to take 5 days off their site to come do the training, and having that funding for them was really great. So hopefully we can get more situations like that.
I mean, so many jurisdictions to do that. I mean, it makes so much sense that we're always identifying the shortage of trades who are familiar with high performance building and passive house. That's smart of Santa Barbara. So yeah.
Yep.
All right, everybody, all you other cities, get your act together. So you've been at this for a while. What has surprised you in this work? Is there anything that's yeah.
I think the most surprising thing is that it has nothing to do with building science.
Yeah.
I feel like it really comes down to a confidence issue and kind of a maturity that the construction industry is kind of going through. In the US specifically, we've had, and I talk about in the US a lot. I always feel like, because I was abroad for so long, when I came back, I was looking at it from a different perspective,
Yeah.
And I feel like there's kind of this culture, there has been this culture of people ending up in construction because they didn't do well in school or something else, and they ended up with a hammer in their hand. And there's that kind of mentality about it. And that's changing big time right now. And I think, even if that is how they ended up in construction, I think there's more and more construction professionals that are seeing that business model plays into it, and quality assurance plays into it, and all of these things. And they're getting really excited about that. And so, you look at communities like the BS and Beer community and the Keep Craft Alive community, and I think it feels like there's a little revival of kind of the idea that this is a craft.
Yeah.
And taking pride in it is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've got that confidence and you start taking pride in it, you start investigating things like building science, because you want to do better and you want to provide a better product. And that is kind of, it's almost like it has nothing to do with the actual building science or the passive house standard. It's about just an industry trying to do better,
Right. What you described, really, I've seen kind of play out with Sam Hagerman, who introduced me to passive house, and I don't know, 13, 14 years ago. But that kind of commitment to craft, and that commitment being the thing that leads you to passive house practice as a builder. That was his story, for sure. It's this dedication to kind of excellence and then discovery is exciting to watch. So that's cool. That's good to hear. So let's, if you don't mind, why don't we pivot a little bit to the Marshall Fire? Because it sounds like you're involved in that and the rebuilding effort. Maybe could you outline for people who are unclear about what the Marshall Fire, what it was, what happened, what's going on in terms of the response to that fire, and then how have you been involved?
Yeah. So at the very end of last year, right before, everybody was looking forward to 2022 being better than 2021, we Colorado, being the got hit with the biggest wildland fire or the most damaging one in the state's history, I believe. It started as a grass fire in Boulder County and basically took out an entire neighborhood of homes, over 1,000 homes, I think, maybe even over 1,100. I don't know the exact numbers, in Louisville and Superior, which are not, mountain communities where people expected this risk of wildfire. These are suburbs of Denver, And these were kind of production homes. These are not folks that thought they'd need to rebuild or do custom building at any point in their lives. And, obviously it was massively traumatic for everyone. There were several folks from the kind of the local passive house and the Colorado Green Building Guild community here that were personally affected by it. I was not personally affected at all. And but it was shocking to see that happen so close to home. I cannot say enough about just the community response that's happened from the building community in Boulder County. We just this past Saturday had an expo organized by the Colorado Green Building Guild, and they did such an amazing job. They kind of pulled together just a big, diverse crowd of everyone in the community to talk about the value of building to higher performance. Excel Utilities has stepped up the game nationally. They have come in and offered a very large incentive for rebuilds that hit the passive house standard, $37,000+ per project. And then part of that is matched by the state in various things. I think there's, it's something like 48,000, maybe even more per project available in rebates and incentives to hit the passive house standard on the rebuild. And so the expo this Saturday, which was called Build Forward, is the concept of, yes, we've got to build back and we should build back better. And so how do we look forward to the future to kind of build more resiliently? And there are a number of different tiers that folks can meet to build to that. So this Saturday, we just did a workshop, and there were all kinds of local folks there trying to help out. We've got a large capacity issue that needs to be filled. As far as training, there needs to be more builders in that area and more architects and designers that really get the standard in order to implement it. So working on that. Yeah,
right. Because I mean, to have so many projects that need to be built, and hopefully it'll be possible for homeowners and families to be homeowners as they're rebuilding, and families to choose passive house in their projects, but that is a lot of work in one spot. That it hasn't been traditionally an epicenter of passive house practice. So you were talking about your experience in Italy, not seeing designs executed necessarily in the field as designed. That'll be really critical for this. Do you see? Will there be more opportunities for training, you think, or how is this going to, how do you see this unfolding over the next year or something?
Our EMU's biggest focus right now is trying to get more of the builders in training so that they're ready to offer these incentives to homeowners. The fear is that the ticket item is so large that the temptation is there without really understanding what you're getting into. And so obviously we need to work on that.
Right.
But overall, training needs to go up in general. There also needs to be more capacity on the designer and architect side of things. The Colorado Green Building Guild is the point of reference for all of this. They're doing a great job at pulling together as many resources as they can. And they have recently collected a bunch of sponsorship. They have pulled together a scholarship fund. And so they're going to start, I think they're trying to figure out how to roll that out, application process and such over these next few months. But the idea is that they can start to help fund some of this training that needs to happen to build up the capacity in the area.
And there's some great reporting around this. Andrew Mitchler, I think, has been a little bit of a one-man PR machine around this. So there's a great NPR story that has been circulating in the last week or so about one piece of this effort, which is the Restore Passive House model that I think that he's worked on with Rob Harrison. And then I know that there's some Colorado Public TV pieces about this as well, with some really powerful stories about the families who have been impacted by this, and just kind of
There's one in particular that I think is an interesting story. It's a local builder, actually works for a builder called Hammerwell, and had some already had passive house experience, and lived in one of these homes that was a production home from the 90s. But over the years, because of his passive house enthusiasm, he would, do things to the house. So he electrified it. He, air sealed a little bit more than his neighbors, of course, and all of that. And one of the things that was amazing is that the fire came right up to his house in their neighborhood and, burned down the house across the street from him. And he was able to re-enter his home the next day because there weren't natural gas issues and there was no smoke damage because of the air sealing.
Right.
Whereas he's got some neighbors that are still not back in their homes because the structures are not resilient enough to handle being even near a fire. And that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
You over and over again see that the ability to get back in the home is very directly related to that air sealing again. And you think about the costs, the insurance costs, everything else of a family being displaced, not to mention the emotional costs. That's huge.
Yeah. I mean, it's another, right. It's all about resilience there. I was also struck by, and I think Andrew mentioned this, was just that the simplicity of form that passive house design kind of leads us to is also an advantage in terms of, basically fire resistance. Like there are fewer nooks and crannies kind of for embers to enter through. So that's the power of the simplicity has these unexpected kind of benefits for fire. I've also heard about this with thought about this with embodied carbon as well. It's really
over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, again, one of the reasons passive house is like our benchmark for everything is over and over again throughout my career. I've found that it just feeds so nicely into all these other concepts that we need to be looking at as well, and it plays well with others, as they say.
Right.
It's something that makes it easier to hit net zero because you're reducing the amount of PVs you need. It makes it easier to hit FireWise goals. It makes it easier to hit carbon goals, and you can start incorporating natural building into it. And then you're in a whole nother thing.
Right.
It's just the value of it as a performance metric and as just a replacement to building code, I think is really huge.
Yeah. And you have been a very effective and important voice about this for a long time. And I really, your communications pieces and creativity, I think, have been an inspiration for sure. So it's been cool to see. And I'm really pleased that you're doing this work. So thank you for it. And thanks for taking some time to talk with us today too.
Of course.
This is awesome. So as we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I mean, usually when someone asks me to add a thing at the end, the thing I always come back to is just kind of a message for folks that are interested in this, but haven't taken the plunge, which would be that a lot of times I find that the perceived leap to something like passive house and advanced building science is often much greater than the actual leap. And it really comes down to, again, caring and quality of craft and just taking pride in what you do. And a lot of folks who are already doing those things out there do not find it a big shift. It's more of a mentality shift and some sequencing stuff. But so I'd encourage anybody who, is interested in this type of thing to, get trained, to learn about it. Doesn't have to be with us. I don't care. All boats rise with the tide. Go get trained somewhere and learn about this, because we need more folks in the industry that are supporting each other. That's the biggest thing I've seen over the past couple of years, honestly, is that I think the community building aspect of this is really what's making it more popular and more understandable for folks.
Yeah. So jump in. The water's great.
Yes.
Well, great interview. Thanks, Zach. And like you said at the beginning, it's funny when we have these people that have been so active and we feel like we've spoken to them before, but we find out, no, we haven't. But
right.
But Mariana has been on a construction tech session, and there's lots of content that they've either produced themselves on their own site, but we'll put the links to where we've had things to do with EMU, or EMU have presented on the accelerator.
Indeed. Yeah, we'll have lots of good links in the show notes. So check that out.
So so much about education. I really like this theme of people wanting to really thinking about how can they have the most impact, and often it lands with education, and that's what Mariana and the rest of the team at EMU have done so much focus on spreading knowledge and increasing, as she mentions, rising the tide, increasing the number of professionals with a particular focus on the builders, not just the designers, but really getting on the tools and figuring out how to do air tightness and how to install windows and how to make good systems work as a craft. Obviously they enjoy that, and it is paying dividends because it's putting a lot of more skills in the hands of people who are creating wonderful buildings.
I was really encouraged by hearing that the county, I think Santa Barbara, I believe, underwrote the training there. I think that we need, this is just a general theme that I think is just permeating through our entire industry, and that's just how critically important it is to train trades. And that goes for the construction trades and through to like mechanical installers of mechanical equipment and electricians, like just everything. And so I hope that is the kind of a sign of the future for EMU, that we'll see more of that kind of underwriting by local jurisdictions and support, and sold out classes throughout the country, because they've got this mobile setup they can do and really scale up. So it's such a need, and we've got solutions. We have people who know how to deliver this information and do it in a hands-on experiential way that really helps the lessons stick. So it was good. It is
a need, and I think it might not be always an obvious need, but the potential return on that investment from a local energy network could be pretty significant. Builders can have a lot of sway with clients, and they can be a bit of a hurdle. So you can have the best design in the world, but I've heard so many stories of clients being swayed by a builder who says, "Oh no, you don't need that," or "No, that's not the way we do things." But if you have a builder who is really understands the why things have been drawn the way they have, and goes to the high level of detail and craft, and has pride in their craft, then that could make a big difference. And for an energy network, that could, if that happens enough times on the grid that they're looking after, then that's going to have a significant impact on that infrastructure. So there are returns there, and it's great to, I agree. I think it's amazing to have leadership coming from that sector to help, because it can be a bit of a lot of these builders will be small businesses as well. They might just be themselves and a few guys, and it's hard for them to take 5 days and pay fees and all that time they're not earning. Yeah,
definitely. Right. And so at least the fees part gets taken care of. That's helpful.
I really like Mariana's final point towards the end of the interview there, where she said that one of the great things about Passive House is that it solves so many problems and plays nicely with so many other things. And that's something that I have a particular affiliation with in my daily work at the Green Building Council here. Mm-hmm. But also I think it's a really great way to think about Passive House as the foundation for good, green, sustainable, healthy building, if you have an envelope that is well constructed, well designed, then the ability to make that home just a great home or a great building in any direction is really enhanced. So, and I met and talked about this quite a lot while we were in Chicago, and I talked about what I do and where I work, and I just kept repeating that fact that Passive House is just such a strong foundation that allows you to then go on and do other things with the building, and you don't have to necessarily choose between Passive House and LEED or Passive House and Living Building Challenge, but they all, or WELL or whatever other certification that the building owner might desire. A lot of those they play nicely together, as Mariana put it.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, it's physics. So, right. And so if physics isn't playing well with something, maybe you got an issue.
Yeah.
So like Passive House is, I mean, it's glib. It's a little glib to say it's physics. It is physics though. It's physics plus, some judgment calls on targets to hit, and then also really great modeling tools and best practices to follow. So it does it because it's that, it plays well with stuff, because everything needs to figure out how to deal with the realities of physics.
Yeah. I mean, I do acknowledge that there are cost implications, and each certification you do, there's going to be a cost associated with the certification process.
Right.
But if you get the foundations of the building right first, you get the envelope sorted, it allows you to get the recognition if you need it or if you want it in any particular direction. Yeah,
definitely.
And then the other thing, the standardization, this pilot program that EMA is running is, I think, a great business model. Be good to see how that goes. So they've got a bunch of standard. Is it full designs or just details?
My understanding was that it's like a system of details, of construction details, Passive House,
right?
That are,
which are the tricky bits,
right, exactly.
So to have that already figured out, it just makes a lot of sense, so that people don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. You just kind of use what's been tested and proven, and run with it. And they've got it for all the different climate zones across the US at the moment.
I mean, it is I think I've never heard of that model before. It is really interesting, and I'm looking forward to hearing how it progresses and how it goes. And it makes sense that they are developing this large community through their educational programs. So they've got these relationships already, which it's good stuff.
Awesome. Hey, well, great to hook that up. And it was great to meet everyone, including Mariana.
Yeah, right. She was there too. Well, Matthew, everybody was so excited to see you, and it was just you were like the star and special guest. It was super fun.
Well, I feel very fortunate, and great appreciation to all our supporters who made that possible, because it certainly wouldn't have been possible without them and then the rest of the accelerator to pull that off. So I feel very, very lucky to have to come there and met there, and I feel like there's some great conversations and more to be done behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. What have we got coming up? The just because FierceCon is done for this year doesn't mean that the events don't stop.
No, they keep coming. So this Wednesday, our time, so Thursday, your time, we have a Passive House Accelerator Live construction tech episode, and we're going to be joined by Chris Fuller of Stengel Engineering. Stengel Engineering is a really critically important kind of pioneering passive house engineering firm based in Virginia, and they've been part of the North American scene for years and years. Chris Fuller is going to be presenting minimizing carbon in multifamily systems at Construction Tech. So we hope to see you all there. Then November 11th through 13th, we're having International Passive House Open Days, which is organized by the International Passive House Association. And so affiliate groups like the Passive House Network in the US, Passive House Canada, and then I'm sure Passive House Institute New Zealand and Australian Passive House Association will be involved as well. Many, all around the world will be doing open days. So these are open houses that people can experience themselves and find out what Passive House is all about by actually being inside one. So we'll have links to some of the resources that you can access to find where these cool houses are. And then also on the PHI the Passive House Network front, the 2023 Passive House Network Conference is going to be held in Denver, Colorado from September 28th through October 6th, 2023. And they have a call for papers that is now open. So the submission deadline is January 31st. So you have a little bit of time to put together your submission. But please put together if you got a project you want to share or some key insights that you'd like to share at the conference, please put that submission together, and we'll see you in Denver in next fall, which will be great. I think there's going to be a lot of information coming out of the Marshall Fire rebuild effort that will be highlighted at that conference. It's going to be, I think, a really good one.
Yeah.
And there are other Passive House and Passive House related events coming up that we'll have in our Passive House weekly publication and newsletter, and we'll include a link to all that in the show notes.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's I think does it for this week. Thank you, Zach. We'll be back again each week with a regular episode, but we've got quite a few special episodes that we'll be interspersing amongst that with interviews and some features from FierceCon in Chicago recently. But we will be back again at a regular time next week for a regular episode of the Passive House podcast. So thanks very much for listening in. We'll talk to you then.